Hello, my name is Trevor Greenhill. I have been a teacher for 33 years and used steer tracking for 2 years before I very enthusiastically enjoyed the company. I will demonstrate to you for the next 15 minutes how using steer tracking works. But for me, it was all about the hidden voice of all the pupils within my care, so I could gain a deeper understanding of each pupil, which allowed staff expertise and to be used and implemented in a targeted way, and then allowed evidence of impact over time. Lives are changed by identifying early emerging mental health risks in those not showing signs of vulnerability. So I will turn my camera off now and I will share my screen to show the AS tracking portal. So STEER is a whole school application to proactively safeguard young people's mental health and well-being. Its purpose is to empower teachers to measure, track, and improve young people's self-regulation. And why is self-regulation so important? Is the ability to purposefully regulate our response in different interactions and contexts, and is foundational to good mental health, social agility, and sustained performance. STEER's whole school assessment, completed termly by each student, measures how they self-regulate 4 factors that are important to healthy adolescent development. That is self-disclosure, trust of self, trust of others, and seeking change. Using the whole school data enables teachers to hear every student's voice, identify those pupils who are struggling to self-regulate, equip teachers to help those young people self-regulate better, and to even evidence impact. So let's imagine your school is using STEER Essentials. Your STEER platform would look like this. Your students have completed their assessment, perhaps in a tutor lesson on an iPad, desktop, or any other device in use at your school, and it would have taken less than 15 minutes to complete. You can use filters to see the data for all the students in a particular cohort, and there they are. Each student has assessment data for the 4 factors: self-disclosure, trust of self, trust of others, and seeking change. And let me focus on one factor as a particular example. Each factor is supported by a teaching page like this. We learn what self-disclosure is, why it is important for young people to self-regulate their self-disclosure, how the assessment questions measure self-disclosure, and how the assessment measures self-disclosure. We understand what it means to be lower disclosing and higher disclosing. We can view the risks for low disclosing students and why they are more vulnerable. So let's look at one student who is identified with a low self-disclosure bias. Let's pause and consider that low disclosing students are more likely to mask what they're thinking or feeling. They're unlikely to reach out for support, and their behavior might suggest all is well, yet there may be risks hidden from us. And as teachers, we can only respond to what has been made visible or shared with us. STEER will make visible the hidden student's voice, so you can act earlier to safeguard your students' well-being and mental health. So we click on one student and we'll look at Tariq's data. We can see he has assessment scores in each factor, and by clicking on each factor score, we can see how his data has changed over time. Previous and then current assessment. If we view the tracking page, we can look at Tarek's assessment data across all 4 factors. And do you notice a visual change? Tarek had healthy self-regulation, but now we see that he has developed what we call polar biases in 3 of the 4 factors. When a student who has had healthy self-regulation is now struggling, we call this dysregulation. So we take a moment to consider what may have happened to trigger this change, perhaps bullying, being dropped from a team, or friendship issues. Remember that Tarek is low disclosing, so he's unlikely to share anybody or reach out for help. We can explore Tarek's self-disclosure by clicking on the slider here. On this page, we see that Tarek's self-disclosure history, the risks, how Tarek has answered the 4 self-disclosure questions, and we can imagine ourselves in Tarek's shoes. Having identified the risks, you would want to know how to help him better self-regulate and improve his self-disclosure. So we will consider the action planning process. First, Tarek's teachers select a factor bias. Whilst Tarek has 3 polar biases, we will write an action plan to address his polar low self-disclosure. His teachers use their judgment, consider why Tarek may be low self-disclosing, selecting from a bank of questions. And then use their judgment to consider which internalizing risks Tarek may be vulnerable to, selecting from another bank of statements. They then select a goal to work towards. They will then identify a signpost to achieve this goal. And would then personalize that signpost for Tarek. Notice how small and subtle but strategic their action will be. They will identify who will implement the action plan. And finally, set a review date. And here is Tarek's action plan for low self-disclosure. We can see the goal, the signpost, and the school action. At the bottom, we can see Tarek's data and the assessment process to write down the plan. Tarek's teachers will receive an email on the day to review the plan, and they can ask themselves what impact they have observed. Having recording the teacher's observations, the impact of the action plan on Tarek's self-disclosure will be measured when he repeats the assessment next term. STEER analysis shows on average that 8 out of 10 students with action plans reduce their biases compared to 5 out of 10 who did not have an action plan. It is important to remember that students do not know they have an action plan, so the impact is not due to a priming effect. We've learned so far at on the STEER Essentials platform, which shows school assessment data. The safeguarding module enables schools to see data outside of school. So notice what happens when we click the safeguarding module. Notice some students have healthier data in school than outside of school. Outside of school data, inside of school data. Isla White is an example of this. Isla has healthy tracking within school, but notice what happens to her self-regulation outside of school. For Isla, school is a protective factor. Her risks exist outside of school. So you can understand those risks in the same way as we did with Tarek. Knowing this, a teacher will want to guide Isla's family how to support her out of school, and perhaps add on the module supporting families, which would enable her teacher to collate a personalised family guidance for the plan. Teachers can't have eyes and ears everywhere. So no one sees the young person in the round, both in and out of school. Yet often both pieces of the jigsaw are needed to get a full picture of a young person's life. The second aspect of the safeguarding module gives you your DSL and pastoral leads an additional tool to rank the risks both in and out of school. Students are ranked across a number of STEER risks. Notice that Isla is the highest ranked student out of school, but notice she is lower ranked in school, a powerful indicator of your school acting as a protective factor for Isla, but indicating there are risks beyond the school gate, which may be hidden from her family. We can see that Isla has had risks for some time. Her assessment history shows red circles rather than green, indicating risks. The darker the circle, the greater the risks. So if we take a moment to consider those risks, what may be happening out of school. The risk could be leaving her open to grooming and abuse. So take a moment to ask yourself this question. If Isla was a student in your school, what would you do with this data? Act, start a conversation, add a note to CPOMs, look at previous attendance data and medical records. There is a 5-step process: train, assess, prioritize, act and review to ensure that the STEER assessment data is used to its full potential. In summary, STEER tracking empowers teachers to hear every student voice, identify risks early, equip teachers with simple strategies to support students, and evidence impact.